answer a few questions I can. Of course, there's some things I'm not going to release at this time, and the autopsy's ongoing, so I won't know, can't give you any kind of preliminary cause of death. But we're kind of going at approximately 9 p.m. or 9:10 p.m. on Wednesday, January the 5th. Officer John Heath and Officer Royce Boucher, is how that's pronounced, responded to a pending suicide call at 606 South Vernon, where it was reported there was a suicidal subject armed with a knife. When those officers arrived, they parked approximately 1/2 block away to the south and approached the resident. That's an officer safety tactic that we are taught from day one, where you park down the street, you approach safely, listening, looking, so you can see, especially if somebody is reported to be armed with a weapon, that you find them before they see you, hopefully, and that you can take appropriate cover or take appropriate action to protect yourself or someone else. As they got closer, they heard loud, muffled voices, but at first they could not determine where those voices were coming from. They heard them, and then when they entered the yard there at 606 South Vernon, they saw two people inside a pickup parked in the yard. The windows were kind of fogged up in the pickup because of them being in there for a while, and the fact that it was starting to change over to being colder, and so they couldn't really see too well into the truck to see what was going on. One person in the truck was yelling or loudly talking to the other party, and actually I think it ended up being the dad who was talking to the deceased person was the one who was the louder one there. Officer Heath opened up, and I'll give you a little bit of background. As they approached the car, Officer Heath had already had his taser out, ready to use in case something happened. At the same time, Officer Boucher had his firearm out. That's one of our policies. If you're going to deal with a weapon involved, and then one of the officers has his taser out, then he's not really able to go to his firearm. That the other officer's responsibility is to have the firearm out to protect that officer in case the taser misses, has no effect on the weapon, the person with the weapon attacks. So Officer Boucher had his weapon out, and he went to the passenger side of the truck, and Officer Heath was on the driver's side with the taser. Officer Heath opened up the driver's door of the pickup and removed the driver out of the truck, which ended up being the father of the deceased and the person who made the call to the police reporting the suicidal suspect. Then he offered no resistance. He stepped out of the way. As soon as they removed him from the truck, they looked into the truck and saw Kelly Wayne Sinclair, who's 41 years old, with a very large butcher knife. And I'm going to tell you, this is probably 12 to 14 inches in length. As soon as the officer saw him, he pulled the knife up towards his throat, actually making contact with the blade against his throat. Officer Heath immediately fired his taser, striking him in the upper body, stopping him from any further movements. The taser is a muscular inhibitor, and you're pretty much, once you're hit with this, you can't move your muscles and things. Where we are on that. They thought immediately that he was attempting to take his life, which was what was reported when they had been sent there. His actions made them feel that they had to take immediate action to try to save him. After they had successfully tased him and stopped him from being able to stab himself in the throat, Officer Bushy went to the driver or the passenger door, attempted to open that door. It was locked. Now this Kelly Sinclair is sitting in the passenger seat, so he shot from the driver's door across the bench seat of the truck, hitting Kelly Sinclair over here. The door was locked. They couldn't get in it. He took his asp, which is a expandable baton that telescopes out. It's made of steel. He used that tip of that and broke the window out, and then used it to break all the glass. He threw his asp on the ground, reached in and unlocked the door. At that time started removing Kelly Sinclair from the truck, and to start removing the knife from his hand. The taser was not let off during that time, because once you let off on the taser, everything comes back to being normal, and that person has his knife now. He can either continue to do what he wants to do to himself or try to stab you. So the taser was deployed until such a time as they were able to remove the weapon from his hand, and able to at least put one handcuff on him. Um, so he was taken to the ground once they were able to remove the knife and they turned the taser off, and had the one handcuff on his hand, and to put the other handcuff and handcuff him behind his back. Mr. Sinclair actively resisted being handcuffed, actually putting his other arm under his body, which is semi-normal with people that are resisting. They don't want to having to pull and fight. At that particular time, Officer Bushy had taken his taser out and was going to use it, but never did. What happened was Officer Heath threw his taser through the cab of the truck because it was still attached to Mr. Sinclair. Officer Bushy picked up that one because the darts were still there, so in case it was needed to be done, it needed to be used again, they already had contact with him. Instead of shooting another dart, no other taser was fired during this deal, just the one by Officer Heath, and that was the only time, the only taser that was fired during this whole time. Once they were able to get the arm out from underneath him, they had to get on him, get his arms back, got him cuffed. Stood up for a second. Officer Boucher noticed that he wasn't breathing, so I could not see him rising back up and down. He is face down at this time on the ground. They immediately rolled him over. They got an AED from one of the patrol cars. Two other officers who had arrived as backup to assist the officers. One of them was a former paramedic. They began to use an ambu bag, which is the artificial respirations, and did CPR, and they did chest compressions and the ambu bag until such time as they were turned over to AMS or the paramedics, and they continued to perform CPR until he was taken all the way to the hospital and were pronounced dead. He was in very critical condition. Like I said, this happened at 9:10. I was notified at 9:23, and I suspect as this whole incident probably occurred anywhere in a period of probably 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, or even less. He was taken to Northwest Texas Hospital by ambulance, and where he was pronounced dead at 10:03 p.m. Just as the piece, Debbie Horn did come to the hospital. She did order a autopsy on Mr. Sinclair, which has probably started at this time today. When we began this investigation last night, we were able to find out that Mr. Sinclair had went to two different addresses here in Amarillo, and I'm not going to give those yet because we have not made contact with those people yet, and had made threats to kill himself there.
Are they home addresses?
Yes, they're house addresses here in town. That he had made some threats there that he was going to kill himself with his knife. So we want to go talk to them. I'm not going to be object to giving you the general location of where this is at some point, but right now I'd like to be the first one to visit with them before y'all get to. Okay.
Were they family?
No. Well, I'm not. Joe. I'm not going to say they may be. They told me the names, and I'd be lying if I said no. I don't know. I think they could distinctly be. They could very well be. So he had threatened to do this at two different locations here in the town. This was prior to this incident last night. This wasn't a different day or anything. Mr. Sinclair's father was the one who actually called 911 from the local business prior to taking his son home, and told he's going to commit suicide. Actually, his dad went to one of these two addresses, picked him up, was bringing him back to the house at 606 South Vernon, and he actually told his son he was going to get him a drink. He stopped at one of these convenience stores, got him a drink, and while he went in there to do that, he made the 911 call, and then drove his son home and stayed in the truck waiting for the police to get there. Since we opened this up, we were found that Mr. Sinclair does have a lengthy criminal history. He has served time in TDC. I don't have all the stuff here to tell you what all that's been. We also found out that he had a felony warrant out for his arrest for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle out of Centerville, Texas. And we have talked to the detective down there that was handling that case. We were told last night that he had made, Mr. Sinclair had made some statements that he had killed a man down there. And Of course, we wanted to know quick as we could whether that was true. Ended up being what he had told his father a little bit about this incident was true, but in the sense that it was probably an aggravated assault, not a homicide. He had beaten somebody with a rifle, then stole that person's car, and after he stole that car, he set the car on fire, and they issued a warrant, probably because it was the most expedient thing to do at the time. They could make a case on the stolen auto, and we're still working the aggravated assault part of that case, and we're probably going to issue warrants for him. According to the family, this is Mr. Sinclair has attempted to commit suicide in the past, and one that they were made us aware of is once that he had tried to jump off a bridge. I don't know where that occurred at, but and that he suffered, the family reported he suffered from some psychological problems. We don't know specifically what caused Mr. Sinclair to try to take his life and all these actions, not whether it was the incident in Centerville, whether it was a personal relationship or what. Mom and Dad were very emotionally upset last night and still are, and we talked to them at quite some length, but I'm not completely sure what happened as to what caused this all to happen last night. We did bring Officer Heath and Officer Boucher into the Special Crimes Unit last night. I spoke to them for a little while, then I sent them home. We are investigating this, or calling it a critical incident, or an in-custody death, and we're going to handle this just the same as we would as an officer involved in an officer-involved shooting, where a fatal shooting or a non-fatal shooting. Both officers were placed on administrative leave for 3 days last night, and in our way of doing it, I think both of them were supposed to work today, then they go on their days off, and then their administrative leave will continue after they get off until they have the actual 3 full days separate of their days off. So we will present a case to Randall Sims at the District Attorney's Office to have him review it, and the Chief wants this one to be reviewed just like an officer-involved shooting. We'll take it in front of a grand jury and have them review it, so it's just not me or Randall Sims saying that the officers were justified in the actions they took. I will say in their defense at this time, and you can think about this, there's limited things that those 2 officers could do given the circumstances they found themselves in after opening that car door. It's their obligation to try to stop that man from taking his life. The Taser was probably the most appropriate weapon that they had to do that, and actually it did function the way it was supposed to, and did stop him from taking his own life. And I have thought about this all day. I can't come up with an alternative method that they could have used. The only other one would be to go and try to do this hands-on with somebody with a knife, or to use your weapon, your firearm, and shoot the guy. And then really you can't do that unless your life is in danger. He does something more towards you, or to allow him to commit suicide. And I don't believe any of those are a good solution to this problem that was ongoing. I think they made a good, sound judgment in what they were doing, and chose the best method they could to try to stop this man. We tased him. I don't know what caused his death. I will probably have more on that as we get the preliminary autopsy. Drugs could be involved, alcohol could be involved. But we'll have more on that as time goes on, as far as when we get the toxicology back.
How long was the Taser actually attached and on him? Like, do we have like a time period?
We know we do. We have these. Those are downloaded, and right now I'm going to hold back on that until I've told that to the pathologist, and I have told that to the DA, and until I want them to know it, and then at some point I'll see what the Chief wants to do on that. But every one of the Tasers we carry they have a port on them that hooks to a computer, downloads every time, and they're required to download them just about every month to show how many times they've been discharged and everything, and for the amount of time. It records the date, it records the time, and it records how long the cycle is. The cycles are normally 5 seconds in duration. However, if you squeeze and hold the trigger down, that overrides the 5 seconds where it turns off and on. If you pull the trigger and let off, that gives a 5-second run. If you hold the trigger back, that overrides that, and you can hold it longer. then they did have to hold it longer because it took a time to get into the truck, get him out of the truck, and remove that knife from him. So it's going to be a longer deployment than most of the times where we normally had.
Don't kill me for this.
That's all right.
Do you think it's kind of ironic that they were trying to save his life, yet in the end, he didn't make it?
I'm sure that the officers would have loved to have said that they saved his life and were able to take him maybe into custody and take him out for psychiatric treatment. You know, in my mind, they did save him from stabbing himself and killing himself that way. But ultimately, he died, and I don't know exactly what he died of. You know, if he had a underlying medical issue or what is going on. It is a little, you know, it's like on one hand you did something almost commendable, and then on the other hand, this is the outcome and the totally different outcome than they were expecting anything to happen. They thought everything was overdone. They had him in custody, and all of a sudden, the man stops breathing. There's a deal called excited delirium that has these things where people do this, where all of a sudden turn off. I don't know if that's the case in that or not, but that is one of the theories that I've seen, I've read about. I'll make sure that I'm sure that the pathologist is aware of. Usually it's something to do with rapid body heating, and all of a sudden, usually mixed with some type of drug use, and then mixed with sometimes a great amount of force, or maybe even a taser, and all of a sudden they turn off. And I don't know the reasons, but it is something. We've had one of those happen in Amarillo in about 2004. It was diagnosed that we had an altercation downtown with a guy. Two of our officers did. He attacked an elderly couple in front of a Union Hall down, I think it's like on, I'm trying to think, maybe 7th or 8th, but I don't remember, either one of the side streets. The officers there, they had a fight, and actually ended up having to hit him with an asp, and they shot him with a taser. They had him in custody, and all of a sudden, he died. And the doctor then, at that particular time, ruled it excited delirium. So,
do you know how many folks? Sorry, do you know how many folks have died?
That's the only one that I know of that actually was called excited delirium. You know, we've shot literally thousands of folks with the taser, and every one of us that has to carry a taser in the police department gets shot with one. We all have to be hooked up to it. Some of us actually have taken where they shot us with the darts. Some of us where they tape the darts to us, and we have to take a cycle on it so we know what it is that we're using. And of all the times we've used it, you know, and all the times we've done it on each other, we have not died or anything. I haven't had any, as far as been called where the taser has been said by the cause of death. But we have used the taser on deals where, in conjunction with using deadly force, and somebody's died. Both time, I think one time I remember where we used it and the man died of the gunshot wounds. It wasn't anything to do with the taser.
Did you interview the father on this? Did he witness this? And
yes, we interviewed both mom, dad, and a neighbor who witnessed it.
And they corroborate this?
Yes, they did. And actually, at the time, they thanked the officers for what they did. I don't know whether that changed in the future, but they were very appreciative of what the officers tried to do to try to get him from stabbing himself. Dad had some medical issues, and actually an ambulance was called for him. Mom had some medical issues, and we were really scared when we were going to tell them because of their medical issues. And the neighbor, everyone that we've talked to that were there and has seen this has corroborated what the officers have said.
Did Mom witness it? Sorry, did Mom witness it? Or did
she witnessed some of it, not all of it.
Okay.
I think Dad's the one who witnessed all of it.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
How long have the officers been on the force for? Sorry.
Hold on. No, I got it. Officer Boucher has been on the police department for 5.5 years, and Officer Heath has been on the police department for 4.5 years. And both of them have been on the third shift or evening shift, which is used to be our 3 to 11. Now we got the 10-hour shifts, and I'm not exactly sure what the hours are, whether it's 2 to 10 or 2 to midnight, but they're what we call the evening shift hours of the day. And they both are assigned that part of town, on the east side. It is, I believe, Officer Heath was his beat that night, with that his area of responsibility.
Had Sinclair been diagnosed with a mental illness, and if so?
No, I don't have any records to show that yet, Joe. This came from the parents of telling us, so we're in the process of getting all the medical records and any records here or other places he may live. It's going to take a little while to get a subpoena for all those records.
Have either of the officers ever been put on administrative leave or been in any kind of trouble before?
I don't believe they've been involved in any kind of critical incident where they were placed on administrative leave for using deadly force. Officer Boucher was involved in the incident here about a year ago, where over on Browning Street, he is the one who actually was the first officer arrived there. The man was in the driveway with the gun threatening his wife. He's the one who told the man 50, 60, 70 times to drop the gun. He's not the one who fired. He had the people from the Cops TV series in his vehicle that night. But as far as I know, since I've been in special crimes and we would have been the ones investigated, neither one of these guys has been involved as a primary officer on any critical incident.
Can you tell us anything else about them? Have they been awarded with anything before? Or?
I haven't got all their background yet. You have to bear with me. It's been 8 years since I've been in the field. Some of these guys, I don't know as well as I'd like to tell you I do. I have to go up and look at some of their name tags to figure out who they are. And I've actually walked up to somebody and go, when did they start working here? You know, because I don't know. And they'll get me, Barry Carden, who's the internal affairs guy, he'll give me all the background in a little folder on each and every one of them that'll have all their commendations, all their disciplinary history, and anything on their evaluations, so that I can go over that. I haven't heard anything on their names. You know, generally, if somebody does something in our department that rises high, we all hear about the names. I haven't heard their names, but then I don't know what kind of officers they are. Their supervisor last night spoke highly of them, but I don't know them personally yet, and I'm going to do a lengthier deal tomorrow with them, and I'll probably have more. I'll know more about them then.
You know, there's 11 new ones coming out tomorrow. You can meet them at the Civic Center.
I've been them all on Tuesday when I had talked to them for a couple hours, so I just told them that if I'm there, just ignore me, and that if you hear me yelling, screaming, and cussing, just keep in mind that's me.
When did the Centerville incident happen? Do you have a date on that?
I do, but I haven't seen the report. They faxed us a report this morning. I was going to put it in the news release. I'll have to go down and get it from Sergeant Smith, who got it. They faxed us what they had on it. So it hasn't been that long ago, but I don't know if it's been this week or last week. I'll have to give the date. I don't have to look right off.
So did he believe that he had killed this man?
He told his dad he thought he had.
And that could have contributed to his mental state.
Possibly. You know, without being able to ask him, just what Dad told us that. And when we called Centerville, they said everything's right except he's not dead, and he's recovering. And he may have thought he did. He may have thought from the assault that he had, but he did. And then he got here. I know how he got here. I don't want to really go into that yet, but I know he came here. His mom and dad, that's where they live, and we've had calls with him over at that address, or we at least have them in our computer system with calls to that address, with lots and lots of records. So we're gonna have to go through a lot of stuff to see it. And I can guarantee you today, I have not read that much. I'm doing everything I can just to stay awake.
Was one of these places he went to, was that an old girlfriend or a current one, or anything that might give us an idea?
I'm not 100% sure and I just know that we do know the addresses, and I'm leaning more towards the family part that you're talking, but I just don't know for 100% that it may be related to him, but
what was
I'd be lying if I told you that.
Oh, sorry. What was his height and weight? I just wonder, with Taser.
I don't have it, Joe. I'll have it after they get done with the autopsy. I know the guesstimations were that he was somewhere around I know one of the officers told me something like 6 foot, maybe 250.
Those
But
are
those
obviously
are
guesses.
big time guesses,
Mhm.
and the pathologist will give us a much better weight and height.
So does that mean that at the two places he stopped at and at the business where they stopped to get a drink, he was carrying that 12-inch butcher knife around?
I'm gonna assume yes. Yeah,
Can
I
we,
mean,
you know,
he
can we
never
assume
did
that
go
he
in the
remained in
store.
the vehicle though?
Yeah, he never got, after his dad picked him up, was taking him back, he never got out of the vehicle. From what we were told last night, yeah, I'm gonna assume that he was making threats to do harm himself with that knife, though he had that knife and he had the knife when the officers got there. So, and the knife was in the truck. He had it in his hands.
Do you know what kind of beverage his dad bought him?
That's
Was
exactly
it alcohol?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just soft drink.
Okay.
What time was the 911 call made from the dad at the convenience store?
Don't know. I just know that the officers saw the call and went and told me that they responded somewhere around 9:08 to 9:10.
Is that knife considered illegal with that length?
Anything over, what is it, 5 and something, half inches or something is illegal. If it's inside your house, it wouldn't be, but it would be considered probably an unlawfully carrying weapon, a Class B misdemeanor. It's not an illegal knife where it'd be a felony like a switchblade or double-edged knife, but due to its length, by carrying it, you couldn't carry it around just for the fun of it. Go ahead, give it a try.
And that was the father's house on Vernon, right?
Yeah, Mom and Dad's house.
Thank you.
Do you know anything about the hit and run from last night?
Are we talking about the one on Club Baloo?
Yes.
Very, very little. I did go over there. They did ask me to come over and take a look but all I can tell you is there was the parking lot. The guys, the two that were hit, were already gone. I know it was on the. Let me get my directions right here. On the east side of the building where it happened, and it was in a place where people shouldn't be driving, let's put it that way. And they wanted me to come over and give them some advice, and I'm like, you haven't got a whole lot here to give you any advice on. And I think they just wanted to give me up in case there was some thoughts on their part that this could be intentional, and in case it is, that we get involved so that I'm aware of it. So I went over there and talked with Sergeant Gross, who's kind of in charge of that deal, and told him that I'm busy with this, but if something comes up and you get something that looks like it's intentionally, or you develop a suspect, let me know, and I'll have my ID people and my investigators assist. But not any more than that. What he put in the news release is pretty much, I saw the names of the guys. I know that one of them had life-threatening injuries and the other one did. Haven't checked today as to how far that's going, what their condition is yet. I've been kind of busy with this one.
Will you have the autopsy sometime today?
Depends on how long it goes.
Started at 1?
Hmm?
Started at 1?
Yeah, I think either 1 to 1:30, but it just depends on, if they find something real quick, they may call me, and if they don't, it could be a couple hours depending on how long, a couple, 2 to 3 hours depending on what Dr. Parson does.
So you're going to give us your cell phone number?
Nope. But thanks for asking.
Yes.
And it by about 4-ish,
Okay.
I probably might be asleep, so you may have to wait till tomorrow to get the next installment.
I don't.
Because I've been up since about 6 yesterday morning.